Think about this carefully. How many people spend years doing what they were told was right, proper, respectable, and safe, only to reach a point in life when something inside them quietly breaks down? Picture this, realizing that the life you carefully built doesn't feel like home. Picture sensing that you followed all the rules, met all expectations, and still feel something unnamed missing. This isn't a rare experience. It's one of the most common yet least talked about aspects of being human. Why do some people only find their true path later in life? Why does clarity sometimes come after confusion, not before it? Carl Jung believed this question touched the very heart of psychological and spiritual growth. According to him, late awakenings aren't signs of failure.
Think about this. In early life, most human energy goes outward. We're taught to adapt, to compete, to survive, to succeed. From childhood, we learn which behaviors get rewarded and which get rejected. Slowly, unconsciously, we build what Jung called the persona. The persona is the social mask, the identity we show to the world so we can belong, function, and be accepted. It's necessary, but it's not the whole truth. Jung warned that many people confuse the persona with their true self. They believe their job title, social role, or reputation defines who they are. For a time, this illusion works. It brings structure, security, and recognition. But the soul doesn't stay quiet forever. Ask yourself honestly, how many of your life choices were driven by fear of rejection rather than inner conviction? How many dreams were put off because they didn't fit the image others had of you? How many times did you silence your gut feeling because it felt impractical or unrealistic?
Before we go further, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video, and write a comment. What you're about to hear contains insights that may radically change how you understand your past, your present, and your future. The final realization in this journey will be the most powerful of all. Part 1. The process of becoming whole. Carl Jung introduced the concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Individuation isn't about becoming better in society's eyes. It's about becoming aligned with your deepest nature. This process rarely begins early because early life is dominated by external demands. Education, career, relationships, and social approval consume most of our attention. There's little space left to listen inward. Jung observed that the mind has its own intelligence and its own timing. Just as a tree can't be forced to bear fruit before its season, the soul can't be rushed into revealing its purpose. For many people, the inner calling only becomes audible after outer achievements lose their power to satisfy. This is why midlife and later life often become turning points. Careers plateau, relationships feel empty, success feels strangely hollow. What once motivated you no longer moves you. Jung didn't see this as decline. He saw it as a psychological invitation. The unconscious begins to demand recognition. Many people resist this moment. They distract themselves with busyness, consumption, or denial. But the unconscious doesn't negotiate. If ignored, it speaks through discomfort, anxiety, restlessness, and sometimes deep crisis. Jung believed that depression, in many cases, wasn't an illness alone, but a signal that the soul had been neglected for too long. Think of Jung himself. In his late 30s, after breaking with Freud, he experienced what he described as a confrontation with the unconscious. He faced visions, fears, and inner chaos. This period was terrifying, yet it became the foundation of his greatest insights. His most influential ideas didn't emerge from comfort, but from inner dissent. History offers many similar examples. Artists, thinkers, and leaders often reached their deepest clarity later in life, after years of confusion and struggle. Jung admired Goethe for this reason, noting how his wisdom matured with age, not youth. The mind ripens through experience, not speed. Ask yourself this: have you ever felt an unexplained tension inside, as if something within you wanted to emerge but didn't yet have form? That feeling isn't random. Jung believed it was the self calling for integration. The self isn't the ego, it's the organizing center of the entire mind, seeking balance and wholeness.
Later discovery doesn't mean wasted time. Jung emphasized that nothing lived consciously is ever lost. Every job, relationship, mistake, and detour becomes material for growth. Often, you must fully experience what isn't aligned in order to recognize what truly is. Consider this carefully. What if your delays were not errors, but necessary preparations? What if your confusion isn't a sign that you're lost, but a sign that a deeper chapter of life is about to begin? What if your true path could only be revealed after you developed the psychological strength to walk it? In the next part, we'll explore how fear, social conditioning, and the shadow block this inner calling, and why confronting these hidden forces is essential for discovering an authentic life. Before we continue, reflect on this question and consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you feel that your life is leading you towards something deeper, even if you can't yet fully name it?
Part 2. Fear, Conditioning, and the Shadow. Most people believe that what blocks them from discovering their true path is lack of opportunity, lack of talent, or lack of time. Carl Jung saw something very different. He believed the greatest obstacles are internal forces operating quietly beneath awareness. Among them, fear, social conditioning, and what he called the shadow play a decisive role. Fear isn't only the fear of failure. Often it's the fear of authenticity. To walk your true path means risking disapproval, misunderstanding, and sometimes isolation. Early in life, the mind learns that belonging equals safety. As children, we adapt instinctively to what's rewarded and avoid what brings rejection. Over time, this adaptation becomes automatic. Jung observed that many adults are still living according to emotional survival strategies learned decades earlier.
Think about this. How many of your decisions are truly free, and how many are shaped by the desire to be seen as successful, stable, or acceptable? Fear convinces people that deviation is dangerous, even when the current path feels empty. This is why many stay in lives that feel wrong long after they sense the misalignment. Social conditioning reinforces this fear. Society celebrates early success, clear direction, and linear progress. There's admiration for those who know what they want at a young age and pursue it relentlessly. But Jung warned that this cultural narrative ignores the natural rhythms of the mind. Not everyone is meant to awaken early. Some are meant to mature, to experience contradiction, to live several lives within one lifetime. When society defines worth through productivity and status, inner development is postponed. People learn to measure themselves by external milestones, rather than inner truth.
Jung believes this creates a profound split within the individual, outwardly functional, inwardly disconnected. This split gives rise to the shadow. The shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we were taught to suppress: unacceptable desires, unapproved talents, forbidden curiosities, and unexpressed truths are pushed into the unconscious. But what is repressed doesn't disappear. It waits. Ask yourself this carefully. What parts of you were labeled unrealistic, impractical, or inappropriate early in life? What interests did you abandon because they didn't fit the image you were expected to embody? Jung believed that the shadow often carries not only darkness, but untapped potential. Later in life, the shadow demands attention. It emerges through dissatisfaction, sudden impulses, or a deep longing for something unnamed. Many people misinterpret this as crisis or instability. Jung saw it as an invitation to reclaim what was lost.
This is why true paths are often discovered after breakdowns rather than breakthroughs. A career collapse, a failed relationship, a health scare, or an existential crisis can tear down the persona. When the mask cracks, what was hidden finally has a chance to speak. Jung emphasized that the second half of life has a different purpose than the first. The first half is about building the ego and adapting to the world. The second half is about meaning, integration, and inner truth. Problems arise when someone tries to live the first half forever.
Reflect on this. How many people chase success endlessly, yet feel increasingly hollow? Jung believed this happens when the soul's call is ignored. The mind responds by withdrawing energy from outer goals. What once felt meaningful loses its vitality. This isn't punishment, it's guidance. Many people resist this guidance because it feels like loss. Letting go of an old identity can feel like death. Jung acknowledged this fear, but insisted it was necessary. Transformation requires sacrifice, not of life, but of illusion.
Ask yourself honestly, if no one were watching, no one judging, and no expectations existed, how would you live? What would you pursue? What would you create? These questions often surface later in life because only then do people realize that approval doesn't equal fulfillment. Jung believed that discovering your true path later is often a sign of psychological maturity. It means the ego has exhausted its illusions and is finally ready to listen. The soul does not reveal itself to those who are still chasing applause. In the next part, we'll explore how suffering, loss, and inner conflict aren't obstacles to the true path, but essential guides. We'll examine why pain often precedes purpose and how to recognize the signals pointing toward your authentic direction. Before moving forward, reflect on this and consider sharing your thoughts. Have you ever felt that a part of you was suppressed to fit into a role you never fully chose? Part 3. Suffering as a Guide.
Suffering is one of the most misunderstood elements of the human experience. Most people see it as something to be avoided at all costs, a sign that something has gone wrong. Carl Jung saw it differently. He believed that suffering often carries meaning, and that within it lies essential information about the direction the soul is meant to take. Think about this carefully. If life were only meant to be comfortable, growth would be unnecessary. Jung observed that moments of deep inner conflict often arise when a person is living out of alignment with their true nature. The mind reacts by creating tension. This tension isn't cruelty, it's communication. Later in life, suffering often intensifies because the unconscious has grown tired of being ignored. The signs become stronger: feelings of emptiness, anxiety without a clear cause, loss of motivation, or a persistent sense that life lacks meaning. Jung believed these experiences were signals pointing towards transformation.
One of Jung's most profound insights was that what we most resist often contains what we most need. The very areas of life that cause the greatest pain frequently hold the key to individuation. Pain strips away illusions. It exposes false identities. It forces confrontation with truths that comfort never demands. Ask yourself this: what experiences in your life caused the deepest discomfort, yet also reshaped you most profoundly? Jung believed that the soul matures through confrontation, not avoidance. When suffering is met consciously, it becomes initiatory rather than destructive.
Loss plays a central role in this process. The loss of youth, status, relationships, or certainty can feel devastating. But Jung saw loss as a psychological clearing. When something external is removed, attention is forced inward. This inward turn is essential for discovering the true path. Many people attempt to replace loss with distraction. They seek new achievements, new identities, or new relationships to avoid the silence that follows. Jung warned that this only delays the inevitable. The soul will repeat the lesson until it's learned.
Later discovery often requires the courage to sit with uncertainty. Jung believed that not knowing is a sacred state. When the ego no longer has answers, the unconscious begins to speak. Dreams become more vivid, intuition grows stronger, synchronicities appear. Meaning reveals itself indirectly. Jung introduced the idea that life itself has intention, not in a simplistic sense, but as a dynamic unfolding toward wholeness. The true path isn't something invented by the ego. It's something uncovered through dialogue with the unconscious.
This is why many people feel drawn to new interests, creative impulses, or spiritual questions later in life. These aren't random hobbies. They're expressions of the mind seeking balance. What was neglected earlier now demands expression. Ask yourself honestly, what draws your attention now that didn't matter before? What questions feel more urgent than answers? Jung believed these shifts were signs that the center of gravity within the mind was changing.
The true path is rarely loud or dramatic. It often appears quietly, disguised as curiosity, dissatisfaction, or longing. Those who expect clarity to arrive as certainty often miss it. Jung taught that the soul speaks in symbols, feelings, and images, not commands. Another crucial insight is that purpose isn't always tied to profession.
Many people discover their true path later and assume it must involve radical external change. Jung cautioned against this assumption. Sometimes the path is about inner reorientation rather than outer reinvention. Purpose can express itself through how one relates, how one understands, how one embodies wisdom. Some discover their calling as mentors, artists, healers, or thinkers, not by changing careers, but by changing consciousness.
Later discovery also brings humility. The need to prove oneself diminishes. The desire to live truthfully increases. Jung believed this shift marked psychological adulthood, a life no longer driven by image, but by meaning. Consider this deeply. What if your struggles were not detours, but instructions? What if every moment of suffering was guiding you closer to what truly matters? What if your path could only be revealed once you stop trying to control it? In the final part, we'll explore how to recognize when you're truly aligned with your path, how to live it with courage, and why discovering it later in life may be one of the greatest advantages a person can have. Before continuing, reflect and consider sharing your thoughts. Do you sense that your challenges are trying to teach you something essential about who you're meant to become? Part 4. Recognizing alignment.
There comes a moment, often quietly, when a person realizes that alignment feels different from achievement. Carl Jung believed this moment was one of the most important thresholds in a human life. It's the moment when effort gives way to coherence, when life begins to feel internally unified rather than externally impressive. So, how do you recognize that you're finally walking your true path? Jung didn't define it by comfort or ease. In fact, the true path often demands courage. What changes isn't the absence of difficulty, but the presence of meaning. Even struggle feels purposeful when it's aligned. Think about this carefully. Have you ever done something that felt challenging yet strangely right? Something that required effort yet didn't drain you internally? Jung believed this was one of the clearest signs of alignment. Energy flows differently when the mind isn't divided against itself.
Another sign is the reduction of inner conflict. When a person lives according to the persona, they're constantly maintaining an image. This requires enormous psychic energy. When the true path emerges, the need to pretend diminishes. You feel less compelled to justify your choices. You no longer need constant validation. Later discovery often brings a deep sense of inner authority, not arrogance, but quiet certainty. Jung believed this was the voice of the self, replacing the noise of social expectation. You begin to trust your inner compass, even when others don't understand it.
This is also why discovering your path later in life can be a profound advantage. Youth often lacks the psychological depth to sustain authenticity. Younger years are dominated by imitation and experimentation. Later life brings discernment. You know what doesn't work. You've felt the cost of inauthenticity. This knowledge becomes wisdom. Jung emphasized that the goal of life isn't happiness, but wholeness. Happiness is fleeting. Wholeness is enduring. When the conscious and unconscious are integrated, a person feels internally grounded, even amid uncertainty. Living your true path doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. Jung rejected escapism. He believed the authentic life honors reality while remaining true to inner truth. The challenge isn't to reject the world, but to inhabit it without losing oneself. This requires courage. Courage to disappoint others. Courage to release outdated identities. Courage to accept that some doors close so that others can open. Jung believes that every act of individuation requires sacrifice, but what is sacrificed is always false. Ask yourself this: what identity are you still protecting that no longer reflects who you're becoming? What story about yourself feels increasingly heavy to carry? These questions often arise when the soul is ready for integration. Another powerful sign of alignment is a change in relationship with time. Urgency fades. Comparison loses its grip. You stop measuring your life against others. Jung believed this shift marked liberation from collective norms and entry into psychological adulthood. Purpose, in Jung's view, others through service, contemplation, or wisdom shared quietly with those around them.
Late discovery often brings a surprising sense of peace, not because life becomes easier, but because resistance ends. You stop fighting who you are. Jung believed this reconciliation was the essence of individuation. Reflect on this deeply. What if your life was never meant to be understood from the beginning? What if clarity was always waiting on the other side of experience? What if discovering your path later means you were meant to walk it with depth, not haste? Jung once wrote that the afternoon of life must have its own meaning just as the morning had. To cling to the values of youth is to deny the wisdom of maturity. Later life isn't decline, it's integration. So if you find yourself awakening now, questioning now, seeking now, don't see it as delay, see it as readiness. The soul reveals itself when the ego has learned enough to listen.
Let me leave you with this final question. If your life were no longer about proving anything, who would you allow yourself to become? If this reflection resonated with you, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your insight may help someone else recognize that it's not too late. It never was. Final realization: becoming a vessel. There's one final realization Carl Jung hinted at, often indirectly, yet it may be the most transformative of all. Discovering your true path later in life isn't merely about finding meaning for yourself. It's about becoming a vessel through which meaning can move into the world. Jung believed that when a person aligns with the self, their life begins to serve something larger than personal ambition. This doesn't require fame or recognition. It requires authenticity. When the inner and outer life are no longer in conflict, presence itself becomes impactful. Others feel it. They sense depth, calm, and coherence, without knowing why.
Think about the people who have influenced you most deeply. Often they were not the loudest or most successful. They were grounded. They spoke from lived experience. Jung believed this kind of authority can only emerge after life has tested you. This is why late discovery carries a quiet power. When the true path is embraced, regret begins to dissolve. The past no longer feels like wasted time. Every detour becomes intelligible. Even suffering finds its place. Jung emphasized that meaning redeems pain. What once felt random becomes necessary in hindsight. Another profound shift occurs in how you relate to uncertainty. Earlier in life, uncertainty feels threatening. Later, it becomes fertile. Jung believed uncertainty is where the unconscious has room to work. When you no longer demand immediate answers, insight has space to emerge. This is also why many people feel drawn to contemplation, philosophy, psychology, or spirituality later in life. These aren't escapes, they're tools for integration. Jung saw them as languages through which the mind makes sense of itself. The true path isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it expresses itself through restraint rather than action, through listening rather than asserting, through depth rather than speed. Jung believed modern society underestimated stillness, yet stillness is where the soul reorganizes itself. Ask yourself this: what pace does your inner life require now? Is it the same pace you were taught to maintain, or is something within you asking for space, reflection, and depth?
Another essential aspect of late discovery is compassion. Once you recognize how long it took to understand yourself, judgment softens toward others and toward your younger self. Jung believed self-acceptance was inseparable from acceptance of others. Individuation doesn't isolate, it humanizes. As the true path stabilizes, comparison fades almost entirely. You no longer need your life to look impressive, you need it to feel true. Jung believed this liberation was one of the greatest psychological achievements possible. He also warned that ignoring this call in later life carries consequences. When the soul's invitation is refused repeatedly, bitterness can arise. Life feels smaller, energy diminishes. This isn't punishment, it's stagnation. Growth denied turns inward and corrodes. But when the call is answered, even imperfectly, vitality returns. Not youthful excitement, but mature aliveness, a sense that each day, however ordinary, participates in something meaningful.
Consider this deeply.
What if discovering your true path later means you're finally strong enough to carry it? What if earlier clarity would have been premature, even harmful? What if wisdom required time to earn its weight? Jung believed the soul isn't interested in speed, it's interested in wholeness, and wholeness can't be rushed. So if you're standing at this threshold now, questioning, doubting, feeling the quiet pull towards something deeper, understand this: you're not late, you're on time. Life doesn't reveal its deepest truth to those who hurry. It reveals itself to those who are ready to listen. And perhaps that's the greatest secret of all. Thanks for watching.